What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the TCG Empire YouTube channel. Today we are going to be going over Tech Tuesday, and if you don't know what Tech Tuesday is, this is where we take the deck of the week, which was Red Green Law, and we talk about ways in which we can possibly make it better as the meta shifts, as well as what you can run in your deck in order to beat Red Green Law. Now, to start things off, we are going to talk about the cards that you can run in Law that could possibly make some matchups better. The first card being Monkey D. Luffy. It is a 5-drop red card, so you can swap it out from a green character with Law. And being able to put out a 6,000 swinger for 2 Dawn essentially is very strong, especially considering that having that 8 Dawn remaining means that you can put 8 Dawn on Luffy and possibly swing for a 14,000 attack, unblockable. And if you're in the mirror match especially, this can favor you heavily. And the next card is Eustace Captain Kidd. You can play this if you really want to try and go for a control-based Law build, but I don't fully recommend it. The only reason I say you can play it is because it is part of the green package and it can be searched with things like Bonnie. And being able to play the Kid down, you can essentially put the one Dawn on him, and you have so many blockers built in the deck with having the green package that most of the time it's going to be very easy to block. And the next card is Jet Pistol. Lawless already do run Jet Pistol, but if you're wanting to increase the chances of being able to clear board and go for swings every turn, you can possibly use Jet Pistol and go from there. Plus, Jet Pistol is a great trigger into the black matchup, so it makes things a lot better. Now, speaking of black, we are going to talk about black cards that you can run in things like Smoker first. The first card being Helmeppo. It has a great trigger where you get to play the card, and when attacking, you can give one of your opponent's characters -2, and then if there's a 0 cost in play, the card gains plus 2,000 for the turn. Now, this is good because Law does play a lot of 1 to 2 drops, but this is also extremely good against things like the 5-drop Law that is a blocker. This means that you can -2 to it and put it at a 3 cost, and then cards like Kobe can actually KO it. Now, the last card is Ice Age. Ice Age being just a way to minus the cost further, just in case they do play something like Kid. You can -5 to it, and then Kobe and trash. So the whole point of black is being able to get rid of the board as much as possible, and Law is keen on building board, so playing cards that minus cost in order for that to go through is perfect. The next cards we're going to talk about is green. Now, green, all of these cards are basically things that you might want to up your counts on. Okiku is really good against Law because you can actually tap their big blockers, their 5-drop blocker Law. You can actually tap it and then proceed to swing on it if you feel like you want to get rid of it. And playing board control is very important, especially against Law. The next card being Basil Hawkins. This means that if you do something like swing with Okiku, tap a Law, you can use Basil Hawkins in order to swing at the character. And if you have enough Dawn on it, they have to dump a lot of cards to protect it. And then all you have to do is turn the Basil Hawkins sideways again in order to make them either dump more cards or make them let the KO go through. The next card being Odin, kind of the same purpose as Basil Hawkins. If you can get a Basil Hawkins out and an Odin, you can most of the time clear board as much as you want, just for the purpose of being able to swing twice with an 8,000 attack, but also when it's KO'd, you can bring out a card like Okiku. It just makes things great and work out for the numbers. The next card being Paradise Waterfall. With Paradise Waterfall, we're mainly running it due to its trigger. You can KO one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less. This just means that you can KO some of the things that they might tap, like Bonnie or like Momonosuke. If for some reason they have so many blockers on board you can't get through. And then next card being Straw Sword. Straw Sword is just good. You pay 2 Dawn and you can rest one of their blockers. So overall, it's a pretty self-explanatory card. When it comes to Law, they take damage early and then build a board full of blockers so you can never get through. So we're just trying to build ways in which we can get through. Now for red does have a few more options. The first card being Gordon. You can give something -3,000 power, and this works well with the 5-drop Law blocker. It has 6,000 power, so you can Gordon minus 3,000 to it and then pair it with Vista. Vista being a great card in order to control the board. You can play Vista, and now that the Law is at 3,000 power, you can block it, or they can't block it, and it has to be KO'd. So you can KO one of their big blockers that they also use with Shambles a lot. The next card that Red can run is Monkey D. Luffy. As I said before, it's not the same essence as being able to play it for 2 Dawn like Law can, but it is an unblockable attack, which means if they have no life and you have a Luffy on board, you are able to put all of your Dawn on it and just try and swing and make them dump a ton of cards in hand if they have no life. The next card being Diablo Jam. This is the same premise as Monkey D. Luffy, except you more so activate it and put it on your leader and have a 14,000 power swing. Gum Gum Red Hawk is also good because it not only saves you because you do a plus 4,000 buff, but you can also KO one of your opponent's characters with 4,000 power or less. Doesn't have to be rested, doesn't have to be active, it just is any character at all. So working with this, you can KO one of your opponent's characters, and this could be something that they really want to keep on board, like a Bonnie or a Baby Blocker, just really anything. And then Jet Pistol, of course, it has a great trigger effect where you can activate the main effect, or you can pay for and KO a character with 6,000 or less power. This works well in being able to deplete them of their 5-drop laws, in which case that's what they really always want to bounce into play. So you can mitigate that and get rid of it. The next card being purple. There aren't too many cards for purple, but the first card I want to talk about is Kaido. Dawn minus 6, you can wipe the whole board, and in the late game, this can be actually very hard for Law to recover from. So it means that you are able to clear the board and just get swings through, and it's really tough for them to come back, especially considering that they'll want to save cards in their hand for combo versus what to play. And the next 2 cards kind of go hand in hand. The first we'll talk about is Magellan. Now with Magellan, when you play it, you Dawn minus 1, where your opponent has to return a Dawn from their field onto their Dawn deck, and when it's KO'd, your opponent has to get rid of 2 Dawn from their field and put it into their Dawn deck. Magellan's really good at Dawn control, and the more Dawn that Law has access to, the more characters they can play, and the more searching they can do in order to make Shambles work. So the more you can get rid of their Dawn to limit them as to what they can do is very good. And the next card being Hell's Judgment, it does give your opponent's leader and character cards, or in any 2 that you choose, minus 3 power for the turn, minus 3,000. This does work well in being able to give minus 3,000 to the leader, as well as giving minus 3,000 to a Law, the Zoros that they play. It all works out very well, but also for the trigger, it's fantastic as it serves the same premise as Magellan, and it targets Dawn, in which case if your opponent has 6 or more Dawn, you can activate the trigger and your opponent has to return 1 Dawn to their Dawn deck. Now it doesn't set them back too much as they get 2 the following turn, but it sets them back 1 in theory. So being able to control their Dawn, it works out great. That minus 1 Dawn is fantastic because it means that they have 1 less Dawn to work with, which means that that might be a blocker that they choose not to play. Now for blue is very efficient when it comes to controlling the board. So the first card we have is Jinbei. It's the 4-drop. On play, you can place 1 character with a cost of 3 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. This just means that you can throw searchers into the bottom of their deck where they have no access to them again, but also it means that you can actually put things back to the bottom of the deck that are important for them to keep in play, like Nami, for instance, or Bonnie. They rely on searching. They rely on Nami for the bounce effect from the 5-drop Law in order to play down cards again and keep searching. The next is Alvida. The same premise as Jinbei, except you can discard a card from your hand and you return one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 3 or less to their hand. This is good simply because it means that you can control the board and also make them have to use more Dawn to play more resources the following turn, so they can't go with the essential game plan of what they want to do. They always have to figure out a way to work around having the character back in their hand versus on the field. And for the next card, we do have the blocker Kuma. Now, the only reason I have this in here is because when it is KO'd, you can play a cost of 4 or lower Pacifista from your hand. This means that you can play the 6000 Pacifista, and it's just a 6000 beater that is good, as it can potentially KO some of the laws that they might block with, depending on how much Dawn you invest. The next is the $100 promo Jinbei. This is great because when it is KO'd, you place up to one character with a cost of 3 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. You can target a few of their blockers. Anytime these are KO'd, you can target a blocker, throw it to the bottom of the deck, and it's the same premise as this Jinbei, except instead of being on play, it is a 5000 attacker that also has the great effect when it's KO'd. The next card for blue being Monkey D. Luffy. It's just good because when you play it, you can trash 2 and bounce a 4 cost or less back to their hand, and it also gains double attack, so in the presence that they only have one blocker on board that is small, you can bounce it back and potentially have a double attack go through, which is really good. Now, the essence of putting cards back into their hand versus to the bottom of the deck is way different, but at the same time, when it comes to law, they want to focus on having those cards on the board, so when they go back to their hand, it makes them really have to think about how they want their lines of play to go. And that works well with Overheat 2 in the same premise that your leader gains 4000 during the battle, and then you return an active character with a cost of 3 or less to the owner's hand. And the trigger, where you return a character with a cost of 4 or less to the owner's hand, it works in the same premise. The character is not on the board, and so they have to play a little bit more conservative in order to get that character on the field and work with Dawn management that way. So overall, this is what I feel like you could run in your potential list, from blue cards to purple to red to green and even black, as well as some possible text that you could play in law, whether you want a more control based or you want a more aggressive base. Overall though, these are what I think you guys probably should take a look at and see how it works out. If I did miss any cards, let me know down in the comments what you could be thinking of, but otherwise I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's What to Buy Wednesday. And remember, if you did enjoy today's video, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.